gentlemen, the books is in. The books are in. Yep. They in. They're here.
Log in to KofiPaisaTV.com and get Spears of the Mossy Volume 1 by Kofi Paisa Research Team, from Spears the Pen Volume 2 by Kofi Paisa Research Team, Spiritual Combat Volume 3 by Kofi Paisa Research Team, One Night Before Bed by Any Harret Shawn Calfunny, Kalawa's Trip to the Motherland by Kofi Paisa, From Cocaine to Consciousness by Any Harret Shawn Calfunny, As I Learn, We All Learn by Kofi Paisa. Also, if you want fresh merch, go to our online store, Family Connect Apparel, and get all the brands. Also, get our 54 deck of quiz and educational cards available now on KofiPaisaTV.com.
ETM Hotel, Rennie Shawn, welcome in peace. My name is Shawn. I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in to Science with Shawn this evening. Please like the show, share the show. People who will catch the replay, peace to you. Please, again, you too, like the show and share the show. Tell a friend, tell a friend. Also, don't forget to subscribe to Science with Shawn if this is your first time. We are going to build up the channel. I actually have a lot of content in the chamber, and it's just picking and choosing when to go. Because right now I'm in a writing mode, and we're in a lab and we're trying to get some stuff together. So been kind of busy with that. That's why I haven't really just back to backed it with the Science with Shawn's, but I got the work together. Again, as you coming in, man, please, hit the like button. Like the show, share the show. I'm gonna make this a nice little smooth build for everybody, and then we're going to get into, the whole thing about the origins of COVID. I think I'm gonna do that tomorrow. Prepare for that. I'm trying to do it in some kind of order to where people can actually, can build on it and not just be all over the place. I want to kind of go in order. I see we got a little light crowd in the building. Peace to everybody, from West Africa. Double R was good. Too Smooth. Juju, I see you. Keenan was good. Jama and Boca. Again, I don't know who will be showing up or anything like that, but like the show and share the show. Bear with me a moment. I'm gonna get my screens up and we're gonna rock out. What up? What up, Mal? What's good, bro? What's good? You know what I'm saying? Good to see you in here. Hello, Nunu. Hello to you too. Peace. To you too. And everybody else that might come in, I don't know if any of the dudes that's a part of the Kofi Paisa research team are going to appeal. So, you know how they get, you know what I'm saying? They act like they don't know who I am. Nah, I'm just playing. But yeah, I'm like the show, man. Share the show. I don't know if somebody else was already live. I know usually Chill Herd is live on Wednesday, so I hate cutting into his time, you know what I mean? That's my brother, Kevin Chill Herd. Go follow that brother. He does Chill Talk on Wednesdays. Since COVID struck, he hadn't been in a radio station, so he's been doing live streams and such. So that's been It's been cool. Man, texting me. Man, I get with you on that. People misreading that one source, man. Okay, Chevy. Well, there's one person from the research team that's here. Let me get my presentations up, yo. Slip. Oh, we got a couple of more people in the building. What's good, everybody? Again, man, like the show, share the show, subscribe to the channel. You know what I mean? We're gonna get that work in over here. I ain't gonna lie to you. We're gonna get that work in. Kind of go from there. Rise of health consciousness. Peace to you. Any of y'all tried the magnet challenge? Yeah, it don't work. The only way that the magnet challenge works, he said pseudo news, what up? The only way the magnet challenge works is if you slick have to wet it and it's on the opposite side. You know, that slick side that'll stick to your skin regardless. It don't even have to be in your arm. It could be on your forearm. It could be on your leg. It could be on your butt. It could be on your cheek. It could be on your forehead. It'll stick. Those are areas where you did not get the vaccine. And the real talk. Go get a magnet right now. Go get a magnet and put it on the negative side. Make sure you wet your thumb. Put it on the negative side, a little light wet. Put it on your forehead. Put it on your cheek. Put it on your forearm. It ain't gotta be your upper arm where you receive the vaccine. What y'all didn't pay attention to in the video was when the lady did that, she flipped it. She flipped the sides. So it'll fall off on the other side. Oh, okay. Prove me wrong. All you gotta do is do the experiment. All you gotta do is experiment. Prove me wrong. Try both sides of the magnet. Get one just like she got too, that look like a battery. All these people ain't lying. How do you know if they ain't? How you know they telling the truth? Did you try it? It's that simple, bro. All you gotta do is deal with, it's that simple. You ain't did nothing, man. Come on the panel and demonstrate it for everybody right now. I'm gonna send you the link. Before we even get into the discussion tonight, we warming up while we get people in the building. Here. Now, how about you do it on yourself? Hop on the panel, get your magnet, turn your camera on, and do it. Let's go. What you mean you're not around? You typing? All you gotta do is hit the link and join. You ain't gotta take the vaccine. That's my point. Whether you took the vaccine or not, it'll still do the same thing, bro. Can you just hit the link? Can you hit the link, please? I know they lying, Dave, but what I'm trying to do is show dude that you can make the negative side stick on your forearm. Oh, okay. Well, then I'm lying then, bro. You don't call me a lie and don't even won't even try to experiment. It show you where your intelligence lies. Come on, man. It's a good warm up before we get into the bill. Come on. You don't even need a magnet. How about you just get like a nickel or something? Golly, bro. See, with science, no. Oh, okay. At least 70% of you are chipped. Where's the evidence for that? I'm focused. Don't worry about me. I'm focused. I'm having fun right now while people come in. For real, hit the show, share the show. Come prove that. Before I even get into the conversation, come prove it. Now don't you the one with the claim. You prove it. You prove you prove it, bro. Hey man, I ain't even got no moderators right now, yo. I'm gonna create some in a minute. Matter of fact, yeah, we wouldn't expect you to be vaccinated. You can't even prove if you chip. You the one chip. Well, we ain't got no chips in us, so unfortunately, the vaccines that we got didn't have a chip in it. Sorry. Come on, y'all. Like this show, share the show. God dang, this dude won't shut up. Hey man, just chill out for 5 minutes. Let us think. You can't hit the link, bro. Ain't no sense of you talking. Come on, man. Like this show, share the show. Tell a friend, tell a friend. Look, this thing we should have 50, 60, 70, 80 people in here. Straight up. He can't answer your question. He got about another 4 minutes and 30 seconds before he can answer anything. So after 4 minutes and 30 seconds, he might be able to respond to you if he's still here. He came in trolling hard. I don't even know. Yeah. I mean, it's somebody that we know though. You know, playing around and stuff. Facts. Come on, y'all. Like the show, share the show. Why we ain't got no more people in there? Hit that button. Y'all know I can't share nothing on Facebook. They got me blocked. Oh yeah, peace to Doggy Diamonds, man. I hashtag Doggy Diamonds in this video because I heard that the brother has contracted COVID-19. He tested positive, and you know I know he's had some underlying health conditions in the past, and I just I wish that you know what I mean, that during his infection it doesn't go places that um, you know allow him to be in a situation to where he's unable to manage it or get through those things. So shout out to the brother. He had us on the show, regardless of the fact that he didn't listen to us and our information, and we know that he wasn't going to do any independent research to come to an honest conclusion. He should have listened to us. There's no reason for me or brother Ankh to lead him astray. That was just disingenuous of him, and I hope the effects of not getting a vaccine doesn't come back and bite him, and he develops some type of long COVID or potentially have to be hospitalized. Nah, on the show he said he was not going to take it until he did his own research. He continued to say that his own research. He said he's not going to take it until he did that research. And he has some family members that have gotten the vaccine. So yeah, it kind of, you see what I'm saying? Like now nature has total control of whatever happened to him. Total control. No, you good from West Africa, but nature has total control of what happens to him during this next few weeks and potentially maybe longer. We don't know any of his symptoms though. He hasn't communicated any of his symptoms to anyone. So I would assume that would be that. But I see we still stagnant in the numbers. I think going back and forth, back and forth. I think the troll went away. He got about 2.5 more minutes or so left before he can communicate. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen, and I want to get into the conversation. And then if anybody got questions or want to build on something, we could actually get into that. So my screen sharing right now. I want to make sure that I am on full. So give me a second. And today we're going to talk about what is a virus by none other than myself. All right. So, of course, we're going to have the introduction, research, question, hypothesis, definition, conclusion, sources. I don't think I put the copyright. Yeah, I did. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright 1976 Act 1976 allowance is made for fair use for purpose such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, education, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. So here's our research questions. What is a virus? What types of viruses exist? What is a viron? What is the difference between a virus and a viron? All right, so y'all all know what this image is right here. That is an image of SARS-CoV-2, coronavirus 19. So here's my hypothesis. I kind of got this slide out of order, but I corrected it on another one that I'm gonna do in the coming future. But before the pandemic, many people really never understood what viruses were. Think about that. Conversations regarding viruses and how they behave were not a part of our typical daily conversations. And due to that, I believe, created an avenue for misunderstanding and misrepresentation of what viruses are. This ignorance has promoted a lack of misinformation created by anti-vaxxers that has led discussions all over social media that are number one leading cause of misinformation. Without understanding what viruses are, I'm sure most people do not know exactly what virons are and how they differentiate from viruses. People think all viruses are the same due to the similarities in symptoms. That is why you'll have someone like Bro Larry say things like the coronavirus without determining which coronavirus it is, nothing but a common cold. I'm of the belief that the more we know about viruses, the better we would be prepared to actually refute the organized lie that exists among the unscientific field. All right, so what are viruses? Virus is an infection-obligated intracellular parasite. What are virons? Virons are a complete infective form of a virus outside a host cell with a core of RNA or DNA and a capsid. All right, so viruses, in simple terms, is an infectious, obligated intracellular parasite. Virons are the outer shell, that infected form of the virus. It's the outer shell, the host, right, with the core of RNA and DNA and capsid. We'll get into that more in just a moment for the unclear on the definitions. These are two examples of viruses. You have a COVID virus on one side. What's the other virus on the right-hand side, the DNA virus? So you got two different viruses that you're looking at right now. Can anyone make out what the one on the right is? Let's see if y'all know what the other one is. You know it's a DNA virus, but which DNA virus could it be? Yep, it's it, HIV. That's exactly what that is, the HIV virus. Yep, Ramon and Juju own it. Y'all see Nunu in there talking about her job, talking about 12 people died from the COVID. All right, so what are viruses? According to Vincent Racanelli, as stated above, a virus is an infectious, obligated intracellular parasite. The genetic material of a virus is either DNA or RNA. I'm going to repeat that again. The genetic material, which is the makeup of a virus, is either DNA or RNA, right? So an example of a DNA virus is what we just talked about, HIV. An example of an RNA virus would be a respiratory virus or MERS, one of the coronaviruses. That would be pretty much an RNA virus per se. Now, the genetic material of a virus enters a host cell and directs the production of the building blocks of new virus particles called virons. See the difference? The genetic material of a virus enters a host cell and directs the production of the building blocks of a new virus particle. That is called the virons. New virons are made in the host cell by assembly of these building blocks. New virons produced in a host cell then transport the viral genetic material to another host cell or organism to carry out another round of infection. So peep game, you got the virus. Now, the viron forms from the virus, right? It's where you get this DNA or RNA thing, and then it's in the shape of a capsid. It's looking for a new host so it can infect it with the virus, right? It's what this is telling you right here. The new virons produced in a host cell then transport the viral genetic material, whether it be DNA or RNA, to another host cell or organism to carry out another round of infection. Viruses are easy to understand when we reduce their properties to simple descriptions such as those listed above. The confounding issues lie in the details, and with viruses, there are many, many details. Shout out. Now, viruses are not living things. Viruses are complicated assemblies of molecules, including proteins, nucleic acids, lipids, and carbohydrates. But on their own, they can do nothing until they enter a living cell. On their own, they're irrelevant. It's only when they enter a cell that they're able to do what they came to do. Without cells, viruses would not be able to multiply. Therefore, viruses are not living things. When a virus encounters a cell, a series of chemical reactions occur that lead to the production of new viruses. These steps are completely passive. That is, they are predefined by the nature of the molecules that comprise the virus particle. Viruses don't actually do anything. Often scientists and non-scientists alike ascribe action to viruses such as employing, displaying, destroying, evading, exploiting, and so on. These terms are incorrect because viruses are passive, completely at the mercy of their environment. It can't live if it doesn't have a host. All right? 3D image of another virus. Now, the fact that viruses are more abundant than their targets is not surprising, since every single cellular species is infected by many diverse viral species, as we know very well from the case of our own species, Homo sapiens, and the infection of a single cell always produce a high number of viral particles. However, the data have impressed biologists and contributed to a renewal of interest in virus research. The ecology of viruses, their roles in major geochemical cycles, and in controlling the diversity of populations are now active research fields. So just think about it. The evolution of viruses have led to more research and has, and in that research, they've uncovered some good things to help us understand viruses. Yet, in the middle of a pandemic, we seem to not pay attention still. So we're learning the hard way.
Thanks to CuriosityStream for supporting PBS Digital Studios. The Earth never shook beneath their feet. We've never found their remains in the rocks. And by some standards, they're not even alive. They're just bits of protein and genetic information that might give you a sniffle for a couple of days, or worse. But they're also proof that even the very smallest things can have an outsized impact on the history of life. I'm talking, of course, about those tiny genetic burglars that you have been asking about for so long. Viruses. There's no fossil record of viruses in the conventional sense. They're just too small and fragile to be preserved in rock. But there are fossils of viruses of sorts preserved in the DNA of the host that they've infected, including you. And yeah, I mean, me too, to some extent, I guess. But this molecular fossil trail can help us understand where viruses came from and how they evolved with the rest of us. And it can even help us tackle the biggest question of all. Are viruses alive? The key to the virus's success is their simplicity. In general, they consist of a bit of genetic information, either DNA or RNA, wrapped in a capsule of protein. Many are small, of course, on the order of tens of nanometers, while others are surprisingly big. But they all rely on infecting some sort of host to reproduce and survive. We think that viruses have been around as long as life itself, partly because they can infect all forms of life: bacteria, archaea, eukaryotes. And because they're so simple, some scientists think that they evolved alongside or even before the earliest cells. But without real fossils, how can we know the history of viruses? Enter the science of paleovirology. This is a young field within paleontology because it's built on another emerging field: genomics. In order to look for traces of ancient viruses, experts have to study the genomes of their hosts. It makes sense when you think about how viruses actually work. Viruses have to infect a host cell to access the machinery that it uses to replicate its DNA, and then hijack that machinery in order to reproduce, which is like, when I say it out loud, such a scumbag move. The host cell is forced to manufacture new viruses, which then leave and look for new hosts to infect. Except, the viruses and the host don't always exactly part ways entirely. Sometimes the genome of the virus can become integrated into the DNA of the host. And as long as it doesn't cause a mutation that damages the host cell, that bit of viral information may stay there indefinitely. And if this happens in a cell that forms sperm or eggs, then the viral genome can actually be inherited, passed on to the host's offspring with the rest of its genome. So in this way, the viral genome becomes a sort of molecular fossil. And those ancient bits of viral information can also shed light on how old viruses are. That's because ordinarily viruses change really quickly. That's why you have to get a new flu shot every year. A virus mutates so fast that after a few hundred years, not much of the original genome may be left. However, if that DNA is integrated into its host, then it can only mutate as fast as the host does. And since hosts reproduce more slowly than viruses do, their mutation rate is slower too. All this means that the viral gene will be preserved, though not perfectly, for way, way longer than a virus that's just floating around out there on its own. Now, scientists can use this to help figure out the age of virus fossils. And they do it the same way they study the evolution of other genes, by lining up comparable sequences from different organisms and comparing them. If a sequence of viral DNA is found in two different animals, then they probably both got it from a common ancestor. And that means the virus has to be at least as old as that ancestor. So for example, circoviruses are a group of viruses that are known to cause stomach problems in dogs. And scientists once thought that circoviruses had been around for less than 500 years. But traces of these viruses have been found in the genomes of dogs and also cats and even pandas. So the viruses must date back to before those mammals last shared a common ancestor, which might be as much as 68 million years ago in the late Cretaceous period. So what's the oldest evidence of viruses? Well, one study in 2011 looked at the history of brachyviruses, which specifically infect wasps. And it found evidence to suggest that the group these viruses belong to could be as old as insects themselves, dating back to the Carboniferous period, 310 million years ago. But other research has brought the history of viruses even closer to home. Research in 2009 dated a gene found in mammals called CGIN1 to the early days of mammal evolution, between 125 and 180 million years ago. And that gene is thought to have originally come from a virus because parts of it resemble a type of RNA virus called a retrovirus. And guess what? You're a mammal. So some retrovirus infected a sperm or egg cell in one of our mammal ancestors millions of years ago, and now a gene derived from it is in you. And again, yeah, probably me too. Scientists don't think this gene has much of a function, but they do think it's just one of many examples of how viruses have left their mark on our own DNA. In fact, it's been estimated that 8% of the human genome includes sequences that originally came from viruses. So paleovirology has helped us date the evolution of viruses back hundreds of millions of years. But that doesn't bring us much closer to when we think viruses first originated billions of years ago. Now, there are a few different models for where viruses came from, and they're still hotly debated by scientists, so just be prepared if you pick a side. One model is known as the virus first model, and it holds that since viruses are so much simpler than cellular life, they must have evolved first. This would mean that viruses are older than the oldest single-celled organisms. They'd be relics of a time when all life was made up of simple, self-replicating units, probably made of RNA, which preyed on more complex life forms as they evolved. But there's also what's known as the escape hypothesis.
Real quick, to his point about what he just stated regarding RNA, the evolution of RNA and where we are today regarding the pandemic, that thought and understanding viruses or how viruses work or how, that RNA was important overall, because that RNA, it goes beyond just viruses. Let me just say that. It's more complicated, but just understanding RNA as a whole and dealing with the genetic makeup of humanity, that science is going to evolve and answer a lot of questions that people had no idea of in the future. So, I just think that's something to build on.
This model suggests that viruses evolved after cells did, from within their own genes. You see, our genomes contain pieces that can actually copy and paste themselves from one part of our DNA to another. So, some experts think that if one of those pieces became able to make itself a nice coat of protein, it could easily escape the cell and become a virus. The third model hinges on the discovery of so-called giant viruses. The first one, discovered in 2003, was named mimivirus, short for mimicking microbe. And these things are huge by virus standards. They're about 750 nanometers across. That's bigger than some bacteria. Now, fortunately, they only infect amoebas, so you don't have to worry about them, at least yet. Now, mimiviruses have way more genes than normal viruses do, including some genes that can be used to make protein, which viruses are not supposed to be able to do. But mimiviruses still depend on their host to reproduce. So what are all those extra genes doing in there? Some scientists think those genes are leftovers from a time when some groups of viruses were bigger, more complex, and more like cellular life. So this model suggests that viruses were once free living and then developed a symbiotic relationship with another organism. And then over time, that relationship became more parasitic, which sometimes happens. The more dependent they became on their host to replicate, the more complexity the viruses lost, or at least so the thinking goes. But recent research has cast some doubt on this idea, known as the regressive model, at least where mimivirus is concerned. Some scientists argue that the extra genes in mimivirus are just random leftovers that it picked up from its hosts over the eons. Now, these different models all put different spins on the big question: are viruses alive? Now, I said at the beginning that paleovirology can help us tackle this question, and it can. But the answer depends a lot on who you ask. Many scientists are content to just put viruses in a sort of gray area of semi-living things. But others are determined to figure out whether they have a place in the tree of life, and if so, where. To answer the question of whether viruses are alive, we need to agree on the definition of life. It's generally agreed that life can reproduce, make energy for itself, maintain a stable environment within its cells, and it can evolve, among other things. So viruses can reproduce, but not on their own. And we've already talked about how viruses can evolve, but they have no way to produce energy, and they can't control their internal environments. And that's why they occupy such a gray area, because the answer to some questions is yes, and others, no. Now, it has been suggested that while viruses don't occupy their own branch of the tree of life, they might be thought of as like vines that wrap around it, which is an elegant image, if also maybe a little creepy one. But either way, viruses are here. They're in our DNA. They make us sick, sometimes very badly. So there's no denying that they have a place in the greater picture of what life on Earth is like, for good or for ill. Thanks for joining me today, and you're welcome for...
All right, let's get him out of here. All right, so why we study viruses. Viruses are all around us, comprising an enormous proportion of an environment in both number and total mass. All living things encounter billions of virus particles every day. For example, they enter our lungs in the 6 liters of air each of us inhales every minute. I'll say it again. This is an example of how we inhale these viruses. For example, they enter our lungs in the 6 liters, exactly 6 liters of air each of us inhale every minute. So every time you are inhaling, your viruses are entering your body. They enter our digestive system with the food we eat. And I know some of y'all, super organic, super pro-black, super Sabians out there. And Felder, I hope you listening because I sent you the link. The video. This is an issue because, there's certain food viruses that are harmless, but they enter the body. And then you have some potential threats that exist. And they are, and then of course, they transfer from eyes, mouths, and other points of entry from the surface we touch and the people with whom we interact. All right. So this is why we study viruses. Now there's more to it, but short and skinny. So there's an image of the coronavirus structure, which is kind of important, but we all know when we see that and we take all the symbols away from it, we can understand that now we've come to know more about this. Now, so what are virons? We just learned about viruses. So let's be a little bit more specific about virons. Virons are, they are the complete virus particle outside the host cell. To be more specific, a viron is an entire virus particle consisting of an outer protein shell called a capsid and an inner core of nucleic acid, either RNA or DNA. Okay. The core confers infectivity, and the capsid provides specificity city to the virus. Now, in some virons, the capsid is further enveloped by a fatty membrane, in which case the viron can be inactivated by exposure to fat solvents such as ether and chloroform. Now, many virons are spherical or spirital. Actually, what is that? Icosahedral. Now, the capsid having 20 triangular faces with regular arranged units called capsomeres, 2 to 5 or more along each side. Now, the nucleic acid is densely coiled within. I can't go back to show you, but we'll get to that point. Now, other virons have a capsid consisting of irregular number of surface spikes. Now, when you think about that, think about the coronavirus at that point when you're talking about irregular number of surface spikes. Now, with the nucleic acid loosely coiled within, virons of most plant viruses are rod-shaped. The capsid is a naked cylinder lacking a fatty membrane, within which lies a straight or helical rod of nucleic acid. Viral capsids are formed from identical protein subunits called capsomeres. Viruses can have a lipid envelope derived from the host cell membrane. The capsid is made from proteins encoded by the viral genome, and its shape serves as the basis for morphological distinctions. Okay, what I'm basically explaining to y'all right now is when we see these viruses that they make images of, right? They are capturing basically the viron, because remember, the virus needs a host cell to live, right? And redevelop itself. So these images that you're seeing are pretty much, depending on the shapes and all of that stuff, those are like virons, really, because then when they get into the body, they look a little bit totally different and they infect you. They connect to your cells and do all of those things. So think of it like that. Now, virally coded protein subunits will self-assemble to form a capsid, in general requiring the presence of the virus genome. Complex viruses code for the protein that assists in the construction of their capsid. Now, that last line that I just said, complex viruses code for the proteins. That's something that you hear often when you hear about SARS-CoV-2 or COVID-19, right? You hear about coding and proteins, right? So that's a familiar thing with these viruses, right? That assist in the construction of their capsid. Now, proteins associated with the nucleic acid are known as nuclear proteins, and the association of viral capsid proteins with viral nucleic acid is called a nuclear capsid. Now, the capsid and entire virus structure can be mechanically, physically probed through atomic force and microscopy. Now, what are the differences between a virus and a viron? Viruses can only reproduce in the cell they infect, while virons are the complete virus particle that lives outside the host cell. Also, virons are the infectious part of the virus that initiates the reproduction cycle. So that's a short and skinny of the difference between the virus and a viron. So that's why I'm trying to employ here today, is that we learn the difference. All right. A virus can only reproduce in the cell. The viron is the complete virus. So once the virus enters the cell and infects the people, then it formulates what it needs to make the capsid so it can reproduce in other cells. That's your virons, right? We should be clear on that point. Conclusion. By knowing more about viruses, we can respect the facts of how they affect us as humans. It's 2 types of viruses, RNA viruses and DNA viruses, and both contain the ability to attack the human body accordingly. Since viruses are everywhere and we cannot escape them, one should understand the difference between a virus that is harmful and non-harmful. We also can conclude that viruses are not virons. Viruses can only reproduce in the cell, and virons initiate the reproduction cycle. This information is important in understanding the need for vaccines that prevent viruses from being life-threatening and infecting the human body in a multitude of ways. Here goes some sources. There's some branding. They making excuses and we just keep producing. We're gonna fill this bottom row up down there with them people walking. We're gonna fill that whole row up. What's that, 4 books? Oh yeah, we can get that. So that's the introduction to viruses and the difference between viruses and virons. So just let people know, I talked about how I got some stuff lined up. So, I have to go back and do 2 presentations that they took down. But then I got the origins of the coronavirus waiting. We already did this one. We already did scientific evidence. We just did what a virus is. We're going to go back and do the skipping steps. We're going to go back and deal with the social media scientists because they removed them. We're going to get into variants and understand the variants and things of that nature and talk a little bit more about those. But I know everybody want to get into this one. So I had to go ahead and talk about viruses today because it's going to be important tomorrow, and understanding that. So I just wanted to show y'all, some of that stuff that we got going on right there and other presentations just sitting there. So I know y'all couldn't see clearly everything on the screen, but you can kind of see that I do have that work lined up. Anybody got any questions regarding to the presentation or anything like that? Yeah, Sute said we need to hear all this stuff again anyway. He said viruses gotta relax. You crazy. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, until we fully comprehend it, man. Some stuff it becomes a little redundant, but we have to fully understand viruses. You know what I'm saying? No matter who's saying it, and if we hear it enough, we'll begin to catch it and understand it. Like people really don't know, like there's millions of viruses. There's viruses that we ain't even came into contact with. And the day that we come into contact with the new virus, we're going to have the same situation that we just had with COVID, that we're still in right now. We're going to be in another pandemic. And, it's virologists' jobs to predict that. And that's why they look for funding and things of that nature, because as the population spread, we force ourselves to encounter new potential threats. And those new potential threats are invisible. Yep. They're invisible and they looking for a host. Right now they surviving. Right now they just lingering, but as soon as somebody come into contact with it, I was listening to 12 and they talked about Vincent talked about somebody coming into contact with a virus and then they ended up being the only person infected with the virus. And after 6 months, if the virus, can't find a host, it's dead right there. Yep. Saltwater container, man, on them beach. Yep, sure do. They can live in that environment. But a lot of those saltwater viruses don't really harm us. You remember maybe 2 years ago, because COVID, when nobody really at the beach. You remember people were getting infected with something at the beach and it was killing some people? You remember that? Like some type of virus that was affecting people at the beach? That was crazy. We never really got a full understanding of that. Oh, yeah, of course. You know that, Chuck. Got to keep it. Yeah. I know Unc wanted to do that. He wanted to talk about the origins of the coronavirus, but I add him after I get my slides off. But yeah, man, we loaded up over here. I don't want to make this too long, you know. I want to kind of keep the lessons light and learnful. But I know that coronavirus thing might be a little extensive. A couple of the other ones be a little bit extensive. But man, if none of y'all got any questions or anything like that, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this up and probably hit the live button on the Mossy. Peace out.
Log in to KofiPaisaTV.com and get Spears of the Mossy Volume 1 by Kofi Paisa Research Team, from Spears the Pen Volume 2 by Kofi Paisa Research Team, Spiritual Combat Volume 3 by Kofi Paisa Research Team, One Night Before Bed by Any Harret Shawn Calfunny, Kalawa's Trip to the Motherland by Kofi Paisa, From Cocaine to Consciousness by Any Harret Shawn Calfunny, As I Learned, We All Learn by Kofi Paisa. Also, if you want fresh merch, go to our online store, Family Connect Apparel, and get all the brands. Also, get our 54 deck of quiz and educational cards available now on KofiPaisaTV.com.